This is April 2nd, 2008, Burleson Public Library. This interview is for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. I'm interviewing, if I can remember his name, Mr. Jack Shelton. And he was born on February 22nd, 1936. He served in the U.S. Army from July 25th, 1957 to July 22nd, 1959. My name is Robert Griffith. I'm a member of the Burleson Heritage Foundation, and we're conducting this interview from the Burleson Public Library. Thank you very much for coming this afternoon. Let's just start with a couple of basic questions. Where were you born, and where did your family come from?
I was born in Blanco, Texas. That's Blanco County, just west, kind of southwest of Austin.
Okay. And what were you doing before you entered the service?
What was I doing before I entered the service? I was working up here for a building boats.
Okay.
Back in the early 50s.
Now, by up here, do you mean in Johnson County?
Yeah, no, it was right up here in Tarrant County, just this side of Fort Worth. At that time, it wasn't nothing but pasture land between here and Fort Worth.
And did you enlist in the service, or were you drafted?
I volunteered for an early draft in 1957.
And which conflict did you serve in?
What?
Did you go overseas, or were you here?
I was over there in Germany. No, I went to Germany in January of 1958. I was over there in Munich, Germany, and I served in the 21st Infantry Division, Company C, and I was over there for 18 and a half months in Munich, Germany, and plus my duty most of the time was driving trucks, jeeps, and buses.
Okay. Well, what kind of training did you receive?
I received basic training. When I first entered the service, I received basic training at Fort Carson, Colorado. In 1957, I went in July, and then I had to take another 8 advanced weeks in Fort Carson, Colorado, and finished up in December of 1957.
Okay. What was it like joining the military?
What was it like in the military?
Just what was it like generally in the service?
Well, one thing about it, it wasn't no war at that time, although the Vietnam War was kind of starting to brew about that time. But other than that, we did a lot of field training. We was in the field possibly somewhere around 11 months out of the year over there in Germany, which, I enjoyed being over in Germany. It was something to see.
What were some of your duties?
Like I said, I was in the infantry and learning all about combat, and then got out of that and got into driving jeeps, trucks, and buses.
Okay. When you traveled overseas, had you ever been across the pond before?
No, I had not. I had never been nowhere.
And what was it like kind of going overseas?
It was something different, especially, getting to travel like that. I wanted to travel, and I got to travel. I've been in about 8 different countries there in Europe, and I'm glad I got to go over there under the U.S. government. And plus, like I said, I served my time over there and honorably served my time.
Well, what was it like with the culture difference?
The culture difference over there?
Mm-hmm. Any kind of language barrier difficulties?
Yes, so very much so, language barrier, and you had to learn some language to be able to get around. And plus, they really didn't want us to go off base unless we were in plain clothes, because the Germans at that time still hated the Americans, because that had only been about 13 years since the war ended in 1945 when I was over in January '58.
Well, you spoke of languages. Did you learn to speak German?
Very little.
Very
just
little?
Enough to get by on, like the money and other things.
And they said that they didn't want you to go off base because of...
Well, we could if we went with several of us off base. like going to different places around Germany.
What did you do in terms of leave or when you had time free from duty?
Out over there, excuse me. One time there, several of us in, I believe this was in the early years of early years of '59. About 5 of us went to, got us a train trip up to London, England. But in the meantime, we went through Luxembourg, Holland, Belgium, across the English Channel into England, which we all enjoyed very much because, you know, there was English over there. But the only thing about those English people at that time, you couldn't understand them because they talked real fast and everything else. If you was sitting right next to them, you couldn't understand them. Plus, we got to see a lot there in London, England, that, you know, like the St. Paul's Cathedral, the Buckingham Palace, the Tower of London, and everything else like that, and riding the subways, which I'd never been on a subway before, and plus, you know, people here in this country here think things are old, but if they think things are old over here, I ought to go over there. Things are really old, like the St. Paul's Cathedral, the Church of Notre Dame in Paris. We went there then and spent some time there. We was on a 15-day leave and everything else. And train ride at that time over there was a round trip to Munich, Germany, which is way down there in the southern part of Munich, Germany, close to the Bavarian Alps, and it was only $52 round trip. And another thing there in London, England, what we enjoyed best is our hotel room only cost 80 cents a night, and then all we could eat at this restaurant for 60 cents.
Well, did you meet many interesting people
Oh,
overseas?
yes.
Or,
I met like people from Russia and, you know, and German. And plus I got to been in Munich, Germany. I was only 10 miles from Dachau, where they cremated those Jews. And I went over there a lot of times to Dachau because of carrying laundry over there and then carrying prisoners over there. The guys got in trouble, in other words, they'd send them to the stockade, or they called it Barbara City. But other than that, you know, I got to go there a lot at Dachau. I never did get to go to the other place up, I forgot what they call that place, where they brought the Jews in. Plus I was in the military with this guy he was Italian from Italy, and he was showing me a picture of his dad when they came and picked him up somewhere in the early 40s and took him to Munich, Germany, or Dachau. And plus he was over there also, but he and his family moved to Chicago.
what kind of strange experiences did you have over there with either the culture or just being in the service? Strange. Anything out of the ordinary or, say, extraordinary?
Not that I know of.
Not really?
No, not really. Really and truly, being in the infantry like that and training like we did over there constantly, the training I think over there was worse than basic training. I mean, they kept us going all the time, doing, you know, inspections and stuff like that, which is a little annoying to me in a way, but...
What was an average day like?
An average day?
Just an average day.
Well, like I said, when you was out in the field doing combat duty, you know, or getting ready for combat duty, or, you know, you was in training, and that's when I got into driving vehicles. I got tired of that backpacking and running up and down these hills and stuff like that. And the driving the Jeeps and the trucks and the buses. What the buses were for was to transport guys going to basketball games or the football games over there, and are taking people to the hospital over there in southern part of Munich, Germany.
Were you always around Munich, or did you...
Oh yeah, I stayed there the whole time, 18.5 months, which I really liked. They had the Oktoberfest there, that was something to see. And you know, these Oktoberfests they have here in America is no comparison to what they had over there. And you know, the Germans over there, I mean, in plain clothes, they was a lot of them friendly. A lot of the Germans were friendly over there. And then I had a first cousin come over there, and he was an army officer. He eventually retired full bird colonel, but he lives in Washington, D.C. now. He's 88 years of age. And I got to travel with him and his family quite a bit over there too, you know, going fishing, going to different countries like Austria. And that was something I, you know, to experience, and going with them snow skiing and ice skating. Which over there, you know, you could just put on a pair of ice skates and skate down the street to the ice arena. It was very cold over there, and a lot of snow. I've never seen so much snow in all my life.
Well, what brought you back to the States?
What brought me back to the States
Was
is
your
when I
enlistment end, or?
well, that's when I was ended my tour of duty over there, and brought us back by ship again, which the first ship I went over on the USS Derby. It was a large ship. I'd never been on nothing like that before in my life. Been around something like that. Going across the ocean is something, an experiment. When we was leaving New York City, you know, you could see the Statue of Liberty. Coming back in, you could see the Statue of Liberty. We left out of Brooklyn Harbor over there. I left here right first part of January, going to Fort Dix, New Jersey to go overseas by train up there. And a lot of other soldiers was on that train. And then they, out of Fort Dix, New Jersey, taking us into New York City to get on a ship to go across. But, you know, people, I mean, it's just like a lot of people always thought the earth is flat. Well, it's not, because when you can see so far, you can see a ship coming, and then when he passes you, and all of a sudden, within a few miles, he's disappeared. So you know the earth, what in flat, where you can see quite a ways here on land. That's what I couldn't understand. But on the water, you can't see that far.
So when you returned, what kind of happened when you came back at first? What ship did you come back on? Or?
I came back on the USS Derby. I mean, not Derby, but Geiger. I went over on the USS Derby and came back on the USS Geiger. And then we had to get on that Bremerhaven. That's up in the northern part of Germany, right there on the English Channel. And come all the way around France down to Spain and into the Mediterranean, and pick up some more soldiers, and then we came across from there back to the United States.
What was it like when you first came back?
It was hot. First place, I mean, you see it's very cool there in where we were at in Munich, Germany. I mean, the temperature normally in the summer never did get much over 75 degrees at the most. If it, you know, sometime it might have, but most all the swimming pools were indoors, but they had places there on the rivers where a lot of people would congregate, them Germans, and swim.
So when you came back, where did you go? You came back through New York?
I came back to New York City, and they put us on the plane, flew us to Chicago, and went to Fort Sheridan, Illinois, and got discharged from there. And then from there, back to DFW, or Fort Worth. DFW wasn't even thought of then.
What was your family's reaction to your service? Had any of your other family members served before? Or?
Well, my three oldest brothers did. They were, the oldest when he went in, and he never did get out of the state of Texas, and he was a little disturbed about that, but he got hurt real bad out here at El Paso. Mm-hmm. He's the oldest of 5 siblings, and there's 4 boys, and I'm the youngest of 4 boys, and then my sister younger than I am. But anyway, then the second oldest one, then he got drafted, and he went in, and he went to Germany, and he was at, it was a town right there close to, let's see, I can't think of the name of the town right there, close to Munich. But anyway, he went over, came back, and then the second, the one older than I, he went over to Germany and served his time, and he came back, and then I went.
So did all
3 of us
serve at the
got
same
to go.
time? Or?
No. These are different times, you see. The second oldest brother went, after the oldest brother got out of the military, and then he got drafted, and the two oldest ones are Korean veterans. In other words, they served during the Korean War.
Well, when you came back to Texas, what were your career prospects or education prospects?
Well, when I came back, I went back to work at the same place I was working when I went in the military. But I wanted to further my education, which I did, and I went up to TCU, took a GED test because I did not finish high school here in Burleson. I went to the 9th grade and quit, and then went to work. And anyway, I went up there and took a GED test, and then later in years I went back down to high school here at Cleveland High School for right at 4 years. The words to finish, to type and everything, and paid for by the GI Bill.
Okay. So this company that you worked for, did you stay with them for a long time?
No, they went bankrupt, and then I got into law enforcement after that and worked about 8 years. And I went into law enforcement then in '61, and then got out of it in '69. Then I went to work for Santa Fe Railroad, and eventually got promoted to a locomotive engineer, and I retired in November of 1989 with the railroad. I've been retired over 18 years.
Did you ever keep track of any of the people that you served with?
No, I have not. Matter of fact, the only one that I can remember I served with lived up here at Sherman Denison, but I hadn't seen him in years. But, you know, the others I never did keep in contact with.
Did you ever join any veterans organizations? Or?
No.
Well, since your retirement, what have you been doing?
After I retired, my wife and I traveled for several years with an RV and one ton pickup truck pulling a fifth wheel. And we've been in practically every state except the northeast states now. I've been there, you know, in New York and all, but we've been in every state, in the west state and central part of the United States, Canada, Mexico, Alaska, Hawaii, different places like this. Got to travel, which I never did realize I'd get to do that either. You know, been raised down here east of Austin there, a little small town there east of Austin, and what we did back when we was kids, we worked on here I'll put it this way. My mother and dad divorced in 1938, which I wasn't but about 2 years of age. And so we lived with this older lady there, and then she passed away in 1945, and so then we had to move out of the house, and so we moved to the country, working for these people running this big old ranch they had there in Lexington, that's just east of Austin. And we run this ranch farm for the house that we was living in. And then they had sharecroppers raising all the feed for the cows, which they had several sections of land, raising Ramers and white Herefords and Black Angus. And so we wasn't farmers, we were ranchers.
Did your time in the service change you at all, or did it impact decisions you made afterwards? Or?
Well, yeah, it changed me in a way. I was real shy and bashful when I went in, but I'm certainly not now.
I think the same could be said of a lot of folks.
Yeah, but I mean, I got out of that, and plus I like meeting people, and I know a lot of people in Burleson because I've lived here since I was 15 years old.
Well, I tell you what, I think that'll just about do it. Do you have anything that you would like to add, or any stories that you'd like to tell?
Well, talking about that military, you know, we rode a lot in helicopters. Those old helicopters were real big, and they were real noisy too back then. And they would hold about, I think around 15 people, or 15 soldiers. And so when they'd move our vehicles, like the Jeep that I was driving there, we had to pack her down on a Jeep and get it ready for lifting to where they, you know, this is practicing and lifting and taking it to another area. And so the first time I ever done that, you know, they told me, they said, now when he comes down up over there, you be ready to hook the hook to this right here where it's got these to pick the Jeep up. Well, when I reached for that cable on that helicopter, it just knocked me for a wind. It had a lot of voltage in it. My gosh, and I thought, why in the world didn't them people tell me that that thing's going to shock that way, you know, the static. But then I was kind of afraid, and they said, well, it's over, go ahead and do it again, you know, and it'll be all right, which it did. But, boy, it took a blast. And, you know, there's a lot of snow over there and everything else. Where we went through all these combat training over there, you know, and it kind of made me shell shocked. It was just like you was in war, airplanes flying over, dropping bombs and stuff like that around you and all that stuff, and going off, and I don't know. And then another time over there while I was there, they had a little deal break out over there in Lebanon, there in 1959, I guess it was, yes. And so they sent us out to an airport around Munich there, somewhere. I can vaguely remember a whole lot about it, but anyway, we was there for seemed like 3 days, and they was sending troops out right and left. And they got down to us and they stopped. But then all the guys that came back from over there after being over for about 8 months, they came back, they said it's real hot over there. They came back with sores all over them, and so they sent them home when they come back. You know, I'd kind of like to go on to another country over there while I was over there, but they wasn't no fighting. They just went over there to keep the peace, or before it did start, I guess.
What were, just kind of continuing this thought, what were the cities of Germany like following the war? Were a lot of them, when you served, still bombed out, or were they rebuilt?
That's the thing about it. I got over there and I was real naive about all this stuff there, you know. I said, my lands, what in the world happened to all these buildings over here, you know, my lands? Looked just like tornadoes had come through there, and it was the bombs the Americans had dropped. And how I learned so much history, you know. You can read all about something, but then when you're right there to where you see all this stuff and learn all about this, about Mr. Hitler himself and everything else, you know, and how he had tunnels there running under Germany there, like from Munich to Frankfurt and all that, and they were right there under where we was at, and they had a big ammunition dump or something right there underneath that concern where we was at. But, you know, I told them, I said, what happened to all these buildings? Well, that was from World War II. I said, that's a long time ago. And they said, no, it wasn't either. It wasn't that long ago. It was only 13 years at that time, you know. And so I thought, well, my lands, I couldn't believe them buildings are still standing there like that. But they had the best highways over there. They're like the Autobahns, like running from Munich all the way up towards Frankfurt and all the way up to the English Channel up through there, you know, going into Belgium and up through there. But those Autobahns and them no speed limit. And another thing over there I couldn't get over, bicycles. I've never seen so many bicycles in all my life.
Did you know how to ride?
Huh?
Did you know how to ride a bicycle?
Oh yeah, I did. But the only thing about it, you know, these Americans are so darn lazy that they, you know, they'd rather get in a car and drive around the block, and those people didn't have cars over there, you know, and there was quite a few automobiles and the buses and the trains over there, but, you know, mostly you've seen all these bicycles. Early in the morning they'd be coming up these roads, you know, right by our place where camp that we was at, or they called them caserns. But you see them little lights on there and everything, and them coming into Munich to go to work, you know. But I never seen so many bicycles in all my life. But that was their main transportation.
Now, you had kind of mentioned earlier that the Germans were still kind of uneasy.
Well,
there was some kind of stress between Americans and the Germans.
That's right.
Did you ever encounter any pro-Nazi sentiment or pro-Hitler sentiment?
No, nothing like that. But you could tell if you were possibly alone in a way, not just real alone, but, you know, by yourself somewhere. These people would be looking at you, but we did wear our uniforms out if we had several people to go be in a group with us, you know. But most of the time, when we went off base, we was wearing civilian clothes.
Did you associate with many Germans at all, or?
Some, mainly the women. Back then when I was young, I was only let's see, I went in when I was 21, so I was 22 when I went over there. And I was right at 20, coming on 24 when I come back.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add? I've really enjoyed hearing some of your stories.
Yeah, well, like I said, I got to see a lot over there, you know. The country's beautiful, especially going through all them castles over there is something. I mean, the churches, like the Church of Notre Dame there in Paris, France, where we spent a lot of time up there on the Eiffel Tower up there, you know, that's something, I mean, that every time I see things like this over in Paris, France, or London, England, or somewhere else, and even in Munich, Germany, and different things, you know, I can say, I've been there. I've been to the Buckingham Palace. I've been to the Tower of London where they killed a lot of people. Tower of London is the most ghostless place in the world, I do believe. I think they said it's the most ghost because so many people were killed there because of whatever the rule it was, the ruling from their leaders back years ago, you know, that's what it was. And
have you ever had the chance to go back over to Europe at all?
no, I have not.
You ever
See, I've been out of the service now 50 years this year.
Would you like to go back? Or?
Sure, I would like to go back. I had the opportunity to go back here several years ago when our bunch of choir members went over there, here from local churches around here. I think there was around 80 people, and they tried to get me to go because I sang in the choir. And so I kind of wished I'd gone, and because the total price for, I think they said for 15 days to go on traveling from England all the way down through Germany and France and Austria and Switzerland on this trip, and everything was $1,500. And I thought I couldn't afford that. And my wife said, well, you should have gone, and you should have got in with this choir, you know, and everything. Because what most was paid for was by the churches over there in Europe that pay, you know, set them up and feed them and stuff like that while they sang before congregations over there.
Well, one last thing, I forgot to mention this. I do apologize. Did you ever have any medals or awards for your service? Or?
All I had on the medals was a sharpshooter and M1 and then a bayonet and no, not any really particular on those in the service medals, which I don't know whatever happened to that serving that part of the country, you know. But it's just I'm really glad that I got to go in and go over there, you know, serving my country and you know, and sacrificing my time over there, which I did, and it was the training and everything was very intense. It was a lot more than basic training. But I mean, you have to learn this stuff. I mean, you've been in, you go, if that war had broke out over there in Lebanon or something like that, and send those guys over there, I mean, you know, you're gonna have to know what you're doing, because see, they had me on like a 30 caliber machine gun. If that was my MOS when I come out. But thank goodness, you know, packing one of them things around, and then you got somebody packing your ammunition along with you, and those 50 caliber machine guns, the 30 calibers sitting up beside one of them looked like a Piper Cub airplane sitting up beside a 747. That's what they look like. That's how much bigger a weapon they are, those 50 caliber machine guns. And the military now, you know, is so different. It's so much things to have changed, you know. Elvis Presley was over there when I was over there. They come by, said he was a tank commander, and he was stationed in Frankfurt, Germany, which that's up there kind of northwest of Munich, quite a ways, and he was stationed up there. But you know, when they came by on the tanks, when we was out in the field, you couldn't tell who was who, with their helmets on, standing up on the inside the tank there, you know, army tank.
Did you have anyone in particular in the service that you admired especially, or that you tried to model yourself after? Was it your brothers, or? Well, one thing about the service is what I think everybody ought to have to go in and really serve is discipline. And two, you know, a lot of the guys, when they got in trouble, they just shouldn't have. And I didn't get no trouble. You know,
I was gonna make sure I didn't get into no trouble, like some of them go out and get sloppy drunk, you know, and come in and drinking and all that stuff, and then they had to get up the next morning and get out there and start doing exercise and running, which they couldn't do, and I just didn't go for none of that drinking and stuff like that. And plus another time experience you're talking about, I was there in Munich, Germany, and I was walking down the street. I was by myself this time, walking down the street. I think I had on civilian clothes, I know I did. So I walked up to this guy and I said, "You speak English?" And he started grinning. And I said, "Gosh, man, from somewhere I know you." And he said, "How about Lexington, Texas? I grew up with him and went to school with him. And now every now and then I see him and around. He lives in Austin. He's worked with the Texas Highway Department and supervised and everything." But, you know, I mean, I said, what a small world. I'm meeting somebody like that on the street. I walked up and asked him, I'm lost, I'm trying to figure out what bus to catch here or something to get back to the base. And he started grinning, you know, and then, my gosh, I said, where are you staying at? He said, up there at Frankfurt. He's just down there on leave there by himself there in Munich, Germany. But, you know, there's so much stuff to see over there. I'd love to go back, but it's just, well, first place, I wouldn't want to go back unless I was on a guided tour now, because so much stuff going on over there. Even in England, France, or Germany, or wherever.
Well, I'll tell you what, anything else you'd like to add? Or?
No, that's about it. I think I've covered it all, I think.
Well, I sure have appreciated you coming down and talking with me.
I appreciate you having me here.
Anytime.
Thank you.